I think I'd like to talk to you very briefly about a final subject on the issue of our sexuality. Because when leaders fail, when good leaders go bad, it's usually about sexuality or money, sometimes the abuse of power. But our sexuality is such an increasingly difficult area, and you know why. It's because sexuality has been captured by the entertainment industry as being sort of the bait to get us interested in a particular film, TV program, website, whatever. When you think about it, there's an incredible amount of money making out of our sexuality. And whether it's the film industry or websites or whatever, it's billions and billions and billions of dollars. So a lot of thought is going into how to hook us into sexual adventure. I use that term, sexual adventure, because it's 2,000 years old. One of the early church fathers, writing about the society in which they lived and how Christians are different, is that he said that they do not give themselves, they use tribal violence and greed and to sexual adventure. And I thought, when I first heard that years ago, I thought, yeah, that's a good phrase, because it's that sort of desire for something outside of the covenant intimate relationships that God has given us, or outside of our celibacy, because some are called to that. And so how does that work? Well, lots and lots of thought is being put now into virtual reality sexuality and robotic sexuality and all that, because there's so much money in it. So how do we stay pure? Well, it's back to the same subject or same principle that I've talked about in earlier sessions here. It's fleeing temptation. So it's very important for each of us to monitor ourselves, and where necessary or where it's helpful, calling in other people to help hold us to account on what we expose ourselves to in terms of listening, viewing, engaging with. And I think that's especially true when it comes to websites, in other words, the computing world, personal computers, and the films we watch. Because there's no doubt that a substantial number of the films and websites and all make their money out of hooking people, men and women. It used to be primarily women or men, but now it's equally or almost equally women, getting pulled into this thing of sexual adventure. That is sexuality that is different, that is edgy, that is something you haven't seen or heard before. You know where that's going. You know that what that actually does is it destroys our sexuality. There was a man named Herbert Schlossberg who wrote a really interesting book called Idols for Destruction many years ago. And in it, the theme was, whatever we idolize ends up destroying us. And boy, there is no doubt, is there, that if you get into following sexual urges and feeding sexual appetites that become increasingly divergent from normal sexuality, it will destroy you. So you flee temptation. There are accountability web programs that will tell a couple of accountability partners what you've been watching, what you've been visiting. There, you can call your spouse or your close friends or whatever, but whatever you need, flee temptation in this area. And you know, we all tell ourselves very convincingly that I can watch this violent sexual film and it won't affect me because, you know, I'm a believer and because I'm strong. But those things always affect you. They provide grist for the mill of your imagination. And they go in and they're there with the images, with the concepts, with everything there to keep feeding your imagination. And in the end, they are part of the process of destroying the joy of our sexuality and the rightful expression of our sexuality, within the context of a committed relationship. So as Christian leaders or aspiring leaders, let us flee temptation. Let us avoid any of those relationships which can get marginal, where we know there's attraction. Let us watch carefully our eyes and discipline them. And just generally, let's make our aim to live Christ-like lives. Not to see how close we can get to the world and still avoid falling, but rather to see how righteously, full of integrity, honesty, Christ-likeness, we can live.